Hello. If you're anything like me, you enjoy a good debate. It's entertaining to watch two parties hash out an interesting topic. Oftentimes I get a new way of thinking about a topic, regardless of who wins the argument. Religious debates are particularly entertaining because, well, I know something about the topic, I've had a personal stake in the topic in a past life, and most importantly, I can now watch the fight without feeling upset. Quite refreshing, I assure you. These debates often have an atheist arguing against a theist over some question concerning the existence, value, or modern need for a god, religious practice, or objective, quote unquote, objective truth and morality. Whatever the topic, I find one constant on the side of these religious intellectuals: obstinance. I remember getting really annoyed whenever the theist made some ridiculous argument no sane person could possibly take seriously, and then watch as the atheist side was forced to fumble around for an answer or sit back with a smirk on his face. I will be covering particular arguments in future videos, but first I want to discuss the fundamental problem. We ask ourselves, how the hell can these people be so incredibly retarded? How can they call themselves experts or learned? How do they show their faces in public after such displays? Most importantly, how can they be so resistant to correction or to accepting evidence which counters their position? How can they be so obstinate? I recently watched a Google Hangout where the topic was, are there any honest apologists? The actual debate topic was properly termed, are there any intellectually honest creationists, or is that an oxymoron? It was put on by Steve McCrae, but I think we could extrapolate that title to include all apologists. I'm going to link that Hangout in the description. It's a fair question. The religious caller bore the same obstinance as always. The atheists bore the anger and rage most of us audience members feel when watching a public debate. It was fascinating to see. But contrary to what most of them assume, that these theists are being blatantly dishonest, and well, yes, they are being dishonest in the traditional sense. I had to wonder if any of these hangouters had ever been religious. I mean, deeply, honestly religious themselves. Yes, these theists are absolutely resistant and impervious to correction, but they aren't being dishonest as we might suppose. That is, they aren't lying. I mean, they have no reason to lie. They have every reason to, in their minds, tell the truth about the good news. See, what most of us don't realize is, to a theist, their beliefs are actually larger than life. The mind of a theist is already made up. It's like the old sophomoric fallacy, where they learn something and now think they know everything and are more than happy to tell their PhD professor just how much they know and probably just how little their PhD professor knows. But as anyone who is honest with themselves knows, the more you know that you don't know. As one gains knowledge, humility necessarily follows. An expert in one's field will always be the first to say, I don't know, or that's not really my area, talk to so-and-so down the hall because they know a lot more about that than me. But as one grows in their faith, one becomes even more established in their little tiny bubble. That tiny bubble becomes everything they know. Sure, they can add and subtract and maybe even tie their shoes without assistance, but everything else is superfluous. Evolution to a creationist never happened. But here's some evidence, never happened. But look at all the genetics which support it, never happened. Is this person lying when they deny evolution even after they've learned the evidence? To simply wave their hand and laugh it off? No, they aren't actually. They will shove Kalam's cosmological argument up your ass as far as they can shove it until you bleed. They will spout off about fine-tuning, the objective moral argument, the irreducible complexity story. I mean, who doesn't love a good flagellum? Am I right? Anyone? The second law of thermodynamics, etc., etc., etc. They will continue to use these tired old, endlessly debunked arguments until the cows come home, or until the audience goes home. They don't care how retarded they may sound. They will continue to apologize. See what I did there? They're apologists, so they are apologizing at, oh, never mind. Are they really trying to convince you that you are in fact wrong? No, they aren't. They are doing what any good apologist does, fighting the good fight, as it were. See, the mind of a theist is a pretty interesting place. The average non-theist, and I'm going to use the word atheist because, well, non-theist and atheist are literally synonyms. The average atheist is curious about the world. We start out not knowing, and so we want to know what is really going on out there and are eager to learn. Theists don't have an honest curiosity. These have been called God glasses, a higher bias, the truth, in quotes, and everyone's favorite, a worldview. They have what has been called presuppositions. They're stating plainly why they are so obstinate. See, a believer is just that, one who believes. They didn't reason a conclusion they now accept. They believe a story they were told. Someone told them at some point that there is some creator God who deserves their allegiance, money, prayers, and desperate pleas for forgiveness. So, now, as a believer, as far as they are concerned, that story is even more true than the reality we can all observe. In their minds, it is a fact that God created the world in 7 days. A flood killed everything a certain number of years ago, and the end is nigh. Not Bill Nye, just to clarify why the sky won't be filled with the science guy. That was a sigh. Moving on. Or whatever their book said about the early universe. As far as a believer is concerned, belief is higher than fact. Belief is on a higher plane. To be obstinate is the most honest thing a believer can be, in fact. They're not only staying true to their beliefs in trying times or standing against the forces of darkness, but they literally, in their heads, have a very well-defined worldview, which corresponds to the story they accepted as true. It's not just voluntary thick-headedness to be difficult and annoy the atheists. They have in their heads a roadmap or manual on which the first page lists rules. Number 1, this manual is true. Number 2, if this manual is shown to be false, see Rule 1. Number 3, if you disbelieve Rule 1, you know what will happen to you. Have a nice day. And don't talk about Fight Club. The first rule can be called the doctrine of sola scriptura, or the word alone is sufficient, also known as the inerrancy doctrine, which suggests the holy book, whatever holy book it is perfect and has been revealed by God himself. The second rule is about doubting. Religions teach their people not to doubt, but believe, over and over and over again. The third rule is some punishment. Hell is most common, but you could end up reincarnating as a lower life form, or you will be the lowest in the kingdom of heaven, what have you. So understand that when these theists argue, they aren't arguing from a rational position. They're arguing from a personal position. When you see a theist arguing some retarded, well-trodden excuse for a rebuttal, realize they are being as honest as they could ever be. To them, the argument is nothing but a shadow, an asterisk, an echo. The pictures in their heads are what is really real. Now put yourself in their place. Imagine you have believed something with all your conviction. Say you have a huge emotional fetish for, I don't know, the whole woo science movement. You've spent the last 20 years reading the ancients. You know all your spirit guides on a first-name basis, and you couldn't be more ready to transition into a higher state of consciousness. Some little atheist asshole comes along and tells you you're an idiot. Now, you look at that little guy, your face softens with sympathy. This poor, poor, ignorant friend will never know the true happiness which awaits me. Poor man, you think, shedding a tear. He gives you every historic evidential rebuttal. He absolutely eviscerates every argument and claim you make. But here's the thing. No matter what evidence he presents, he cannot refute your lived experience. You could be dead wrong. Doesn't matter. You know. You see? You know. Not you know more facts, or you have a better reason, or you can prove your case. You know. It's a different thing altogether. Religious people don't have to prove their faith. They know what is true. The truth is in their heads, and they are as certain of that as we are about the shape of the earth, even more so. As far as they're concerned, their belief is an axiom which is so obvious it requires no explanation whatsoever. So when you see an obstinate theist debater making an idiot of himself, realize he is not being dishonest. He isn't lying to avoid embarrassment, as we might suspect. You might say, he is literally as retarded as he sounds, but not in an unintelligent sense. After all, the word retarded is no longer used to describe mentally undeveloped people. He may be very intelligent, but more like a schizophrenic patient. This person has an entire separate reality that is fully contained in their head. Schizophrenia is a condition where the person doesn't interact with their surroundings as we expect humans should be able to, often due to faulty perceptions about reality. They may see black helicopters, or they may hear voices telling them, "Go ahead and jump. It's for the greater good. You could fly." Maybe they don't interact at all and freeze in position, requiring someone to move them manually. There's a huge variety of schizophrenia presentations. These patients have a world contained in their head, and they literally interact with it. Unless you've been schizophrenic, you will never be able to understand their state of mind, but you can identify the condition. I'm not saying theists are schizophrenic, but in the same kind of way. Unless you have truly believed something like religion, you simply can't understand what it is like to have that blessed assurance which certifies your mental manual or worldview to be real, factual, and inerrant. Understand there is no reasoning with a believer. If a believer is to ever see the light, so to speak, their faith must collapse first. You can't reason with them until that happens. Whatever authority gave them the beliefs in the first place must collapse. If a Catholic truly believes God is with their holy fathers, and those holy men are molesting children, those people's faith might be shaken. At this time, they may start to see what may be out there. But trying to reason with an unshaken faith is like trying to hurt the ocean by hitting it with a stick. True story, by the way. Back around 500 BC, Persian King Xerxes actually sentenced the sea, the big body of water, to 300 lashes for destroying his bridges. That's a fun one. Anyway, it's important that we understand where these apologists are really coming from. They are indeed arguing from a dishonest position, but they are doing so honestly. Hard to make sense out of that, but can one's private world of faith really make sense to anyone else but themselves? Only to the mind of another theist. I hope this video has helped someone better understand the mind of the believer. Thanks for listening.